Welcome to What Not to Do. I'm Kyle Schmidt, and this is episode 40. I've got Ron Jung with me here. He is the Headmaster, CEO of Providence Academy, and they are in the business of not only building the next generation of leaders, but a school that would last 200 years. Wow, that's amazing. You're going to love this conversation. Hold tight. We'll be right back. One of my biggest aims in life is to give you more in use value than I take in cash value. And I'm so thankful for all the thoughts and ideas you've shared with me on how I can better do that. One of those ideas that has come up on a few different occasions has been, we love the long form conversational format, but sometimes it takes a while just to get through even one episode. What would it look like to aim for episodes that are 1 hour or less in length without compromising the format? And I thought, great idea. I love the long conversational format too, and I really want those conversations to be as accessible and easy to digest as possible. So I'm absolutely pumped to introduce a new innovation of what not to do. We'll keep the long form conversational format that has been so well received, and we'll divide it into 30 to 45 minute segments that'll make it more easy to digest on your morning commute or working out at the gym or run or hanging out at the house. This is going to be awesome. I'm so pumped to keep giving you such high value conversations, and now more accessible and easier to digest than ever. I'm so proud to be your guys' host and so thankful for all your help innovating and iterating to make this community even better. I love you guys. And with that, let's get to what not to do.
All right, I'm sitting here at Prohibition with the Ron Jung. We actually were just joking we should have been recording because we just had some great stuff that was coming out recently. But fun anyway. You guys are gonna love to get to know Ron's story. Yeah. I've had the pleasure and privilege of getting to know Ron for the past 2 years since we moved back to the area, which is cool. Yeah. So Ron is doing quite a bit of stuff, and most notably, currently the Headmaster at Providence Academy here in Green Bay, so that's really, really cool.
Correct.
You recall from an earlier conversation we had Pastor Jake Spielbauer on, so well acquainted with Ron here, but also involved in Providence, and we hope to even hear more about what you guys are doing and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, not our first cigar together either.
No, not our first.
Not our last, which is great. So anyway, man, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I love it. So, well, what are you smoking?
Rocky Patel, Edge, Sumatra. It's pretty good.
Yeah, and I've got the Nica Rustica. This is I guess what I call the Valley brand of Drew Estate.
Okay.
It's really good bang for your buck, and a great stick. So
yeah.
It's awesome. We're both drinking, I think for the first time.
Yeah, I've
the
never
porter
had this.
from a new brewery that opened up in Green Bay called, is it Zambaldi?
Zambaldi, I believe, yeah.
Over in Alloway, which is cool. So it's good. I'm enjoying it. So this is awesome.
Yeah.
We're on, aside from myself and folks that you might share this with in your network that already know you, I'm going to assume that a lot of our listeners probably have no idea who you are. So tell us a bit about yourself, life, what you love to do, in and out, where do you come from?
Sure.
Who is Ron Jung?
So I'm a California kid. I grew up born and raised in California, grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. My dad was a pastor of a church in a very impoverished area, and grew up not knowing I was poor until I got bused to Napa, Silverado Junior High. I walked off the bus pulled away, and a Jaguar pulled in to drop off a kid, and I realized I was poor.
What is that?
Yeah, I know. It was funny. All my friends dressed like me. We all acted the same, and we were in a different world. And anyway, Dad was a tremendous example there. Anyway, I went to college down in the Los Angeles area, met my wife there. I was a Young Life staff and youth pastor. I was a guinea pig doing this church partnership in the Southern California region. From there, I moved to Chicago for seminary, came to Green Bay, pastored a church in town for about 12 years. Then I left, worked on a church plant for, just maybe a year and a half, 2 years, and then while I was doing that, I started teaching part-time at Providence Academy. We dissolved the church. Most of us kind of merged in with Jacob's Well, where I'm now a ruling elder at Jacob's Well. And
It's part of the PCA.
Part of the PCA. And about the same time, the headmaster at Providence Academy at the time, Bill Gussie, knocked on my door, told me he had just put in his resignation, and that I should be the next headmaster. So it was kind of bizarre. Had no idea what he was talking about, and I guess within a week, one of the board members had me for breakfast on a Saturday morning and talked to me about the possibility of being the headmaster there, and I accepted, and it was probably one of the most obvious ways of seeing God's hand at work. And so I've been at Providence now, I think, 9 years as headmaster. So I'm married. My wife Wendy, she was a military brat, but kind of claims California as her home. All her family lives out there.
In the Los Angeles area? Or?
No, she lives. Her parents live in the Central Valley.
Okay. And you were San Francisco?
I was in the Northern Bay, Vallejo, American Canyon. It's called now. And then, we've got 5 kids. Our oldest is graduated from college. He works as a mechanical engineer in Nashville. Lives there with his wife. He has plans on eventually going to seminary and becoming a pastor.
Cool.
My middle son is a senior. It's his last year at West Point, the military academy.
Going fast.
Yeah, I know, right? Zach, my youngest son, is at Wisconsin Lutheran College as a pre-med dude, and loving it there.
Milwaukee area, right?
In Milwaukee, right across the street from Freighter. They've got, in all honesty, I didn't really know much about Wisconsin Lutheran until I met the president of the school and was very impressed with their vision, particularly about Christian leadership. Seemed like it would be a good fit for what we're trying to do at Providence. Zach checked it out, loved their pre-med programs, and he's actually already accepted into a medical school. So he's
awesome.
Deciding whether he's going to do 3 years undergraduate and then off to med school, or if he's going to put in a 4th year and then off. But anyway, and then I've got 2 daughters who are at Providence Academy. Or one at Providence. One's actually being homeschooled and taking part-time classes at Providence.
Yeah. And, is Ellie graduating soon?
She's a junior.
Junior, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
one more year.
yeah, that's going fast. I mean, she was my little girl
I know.
yesterday.
One thing to ship your sons off to war, another thing to see your daughters go. So that's exciting. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Full life. One thing, Ron's not just a cigar guy, but he's a pipe tobacco guy, right? You introduced me to a great pipe tobacco shop in town, Bosses,
yep.
Bosses and
Bosses Best.
Bosses Best. You could probably get it online. I'm assuming you could order from them. Yeah. Check it out. Really, really good stuff. But
I'm more of a pipe smoker than a cigar smoker.
Yeah. Something about a pipe, so there's actually a really good cigar called Fat Bottom Betty, made by Deadwood Tobacco Company. So, but it's a cigar, but it's wrapped in pipe tobacco leaf.
Huh.
So it smells like pipe tobacco, and it's naturally sweet to the taste. Highly recommend it. You'd probably love it. It's like blending the both
My
worlds.
wife would like. Well, to me, cigar is very much a communal activity. A pipe is more of a solitary deal. So when I'm on my porch reading or studying or praying, and my pipe is a handy part of that companion. Yeah. Or often you'll see me mowing the field with a pipe in my mouth.
Over at Jacob's Well, right? Or
I have at Jacob's Well.
Yeah.
It's like Farmer Ron with his pipe in his mouth.
Yeah, so the church is out in the country a little bit, or kind of on the edge of town, and on a handful of acres, which is nice. But you guys also have I mean, you're right up next to kind of a bigger field, right?
Yeah.
Where you guys live?
Yeah, we have...
and you cut that every once in a while, or?
Oh, yeah, as often as I have the excuse to. So we have 4 empty lots behind us with a big garden and fruit trees and chickens, and
Awesome.
a 5th lot that we help maintain, and then a whole another section that we also maintain, and so that money is sometimes my tobacco money.
Yeah. And people might not realize this if they don't know you, and by us sitting down, but you're 6'5", 6'6"?
Oh, I'm 6'3".
6'3"? What?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I'm shrinking.
You play, right. Once upon a time. Yeah. But you played college football.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
What's that?
Talk about that.
Yeah. So I always love football. People ask me if I'm a Packer fan, and I am a Packer fan, but I'm a football lover first, and then a Packer fan second. But my mom would not let me play football. Biggest kid, I'm strong, I'm fast. She thought I might hurt myself, so she wouldn't want me to play football.
That's not my will.
And then finally in 9th grade, my dad just put his foot down and said, "No, you got to let him play." And so I played football in high school. I was the smallest guy on our offensive line, and it wasn't until a playoff game my senior year, there was a defensive lineman who was all-state that I had to go against, and I took care of him nicely.
Why? Why do I do what I do? Let me tell you. My why is to use my presence and my prose to inspire you to go all in on you so that you live a legacy worth leaving.
After that game, I started getting some letters from Division III and Division II schools.
Yeah.
I was 6'1", about 220 pounds while I was playing. And then after the season, I had a growth spurt. And so I got recruited to Azusa Pacific, and when I showed up, I was they recruited me. I was 6'1", about 220, but when I showed up, I was 6'3", closer to 250.
There you go.
And all of a sudden, I went from being a possible red shirt to maybe a second string, and then about 3rd game in the season, I ended up starting.
Awesome.
And it was wonderful. Christian Okoye was our tailback, who ended up the Nigerian Nightmare. All the guys who play Tecmo Bowl are impressed with that. But
the Nigerian Nightmare. I don't recall that. That's awesome.
Yeah, for the Kansas City Chiefs. But anyway, love football. I coached varsity football for many years down in Southern California.
Yeah.
And I've taught youth football, coached youth football, middle school for a number of years as well. But of late, I haven't had as much time to do such things. So.
You gotta change that.
Yeah, no kidding. Dick Hassler over at NEW Lutheran was always pestering me.
Yeah.
So, man, I just made a mess.
No. Yeah, that's awesome.
You played too, right?
So much fun. Yeah, a little bit. I only played a year. Well, I played 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Okay.
And then I quit just to focus on music. And actually, if I could go back and do it again, I would have tried to do both. But I was a starter my freshman year, and as well as one of my best buds. So I was offensive line. He was stud running back. But we were both musical, and so we went out for the musical that year. We had gotten permission from the coaches to go to do the audition and come back. And then so we were going to miss the practice basically. Yeah. So we did the audition. We said, "Hey, let's go run sprints." Into practice. And we thought, "Hey, we'd be putting a good foot forward." Like, "Hey, look, we didn't have to come back because we had we were excused."
Yeah.
And we thought this would be good. Well, we came back and they had every name for us that you could think of out of the box, and they took away our starting spots. It was that was kind of like the biggest bait and switch in the world. It was crazy.
Well.
So we finished out that year. We eventually got our starting jobs back. But we had to go back and work for him again, And then he didn't play. He was done, and I didn't go back out for my sophomore year either. So just focus on music. But I think sports can be a good thing. I don't think they necessarily automatically shape character, but I think they can teach you a lot. So.
Well, in my school, so I played. I was in the band, and I was the first chair clarinet player in a very big band, and I was pretty decent, and I loved it. I loved band, and the thing is that I had to make a choice after my freshman year. I was either going to play band or play football, and for me it was a no-brainer. I'm playing football. But I still resent the fact that I had to make a choice. Like, why can't you do both?
Right.
Well, to them it was, the thing is, you've got to go marching. If you're going to be in the band, you also have to be marching band. If you're in marching band, you can't be playing football. So I think our other high school in town, Napa High, you could do both, but at Vintage you couldn't.
Yeah, it was interesting. We won state our freshman and sophomore year in high school, and some of the best players on varsity were also had the lead roles in the musical. So I remember it was a Thursday opening night for the musical, but it was also the day of the state football game. So they went down, won state, and came back and started the musical for opening night. It was kind of interesting. So I went to Schwabman just down the street, and so kind of an interesting dynamic where some of our best athletes were also some of our best musicians. It's kind of cool. It's not true for every school,
right.
But anyway,
think of David, the warrior poet singing.
He'll sing a little ditty and then kill you. Right?
Kill you. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Awesome. Well, so super fun. Just the experience, the tracing the story. It's awesome. So unpack a little bit more what it means to be a headmaster, because a lot of folks might not be familiar with a private school system, let alone even like what classical education is, let alone classical Christian education. And so the term headmaster might seem super
antiquated.
Exactly right. So unpack that. What does that mean? What do you do?
So headmaster is basically the head of school. They're the kind of the CEO of the school, but instead of using a modern business term, headmaster has the idea of they're the primary. They're like the lead teacher of the school. So the idea is that a good headmaster is also one who knows how to teach well and can teach teaching, and also does a lot of the discipline in the school. So that becomes the kind of the head role. Most of the Association of Classical Christian Schools, ACCS, is what Providence belongs to, have been going away from that term to just head of school, because that kind of gives both the business and the teaching part to it. So the business aspect of it is the part that I'm not fond of. You just kind of have to do it, and because I like the teaching and the vision and that type of thing. But and in a small Christian school like ours, we all our administrators teach. So I have a principal at the grammar school, and I have a principal at the logic and rhetoric school, and we all teach besides our administrative roles. And I think even if we had all the money in the world to do whatever we wanted, I would probably insist that we all still teach, because it connects us again with the students in a different way. We can relate to the teachers better. I appreciate that I used to teach third grade Latin, even third grade Latin, seventh grade Bible, and I teach leadership classes. This year I don't teach the Latin class anymore, but because I'm teaching a math class in the upper school, and but when I kind of have I have a foot in the door in all stages of the trivium, which I know Jake Spielbauer kind of explained a little bit, but
just refresh us quick. What is a trivium? And maybe this would be good too, because people might not have listened to that episode. So give us just a quick deal. Like, trivium, but what is classical education? Why is it important? And you can even get into the fact of why would I pay for your school? Because I'm already paying with my property taxes to go to the local public schools. What are you guys doing that's so different? That you really believe in, that you would even want to be the headmaster there.
Sure. So there's three things I think that would distinguish us from a public school. It's the ends, the subjects, and the means. Right. So ends and means at the subjects. So the ends wise, if you just look at any Department of Education website. It basically speaks of producing students who will contribute to the economy of our country. I mean, it's in a sarcastic or facetious way, cynical way, I would say public schools are trying to produce individual taxable units to be cogs in the economic machine. And
You're so mean.
It's true, right? The decisions then that parents tend to make are: do I want my kid to go to a good school, meaning that they'll go to a good college so that they can get a better job, or do I want my kid to be in a place where they can not go to college and get a technical job or that kind of. And I have nothing bad to say about getting a job. I think it's great. But if the whole end in mind is to go, yay, I'm an employee, that's kind of pathetic. So the end in mind for classical education is to produce a good human, right? It's about being a human being. And, as a classical Christian school, then we understand that God has made us for so much more. That we were created to glorify God and enjoy Him forever, and we learn to do that through the Scriptures that teach us what we're to believe about God and the duties that He requires of us. So that's our end, right? So the means we use a very ancient thing called the trivium. Developed first by the Greeks and then kind of perfected by monks in the Middle Ages.
Greeks, you mean like?
We're talking like
a couple thousand years ago.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And the idea is you have these stages of development that a human being goes through in childhood. Early on, their minds are like sponges. And so you teach them the grammar of things, right? So they're capable of knowing a lot. So we teach them a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And they're capable of memorizing songs, chants, you name it. But also the grammar of language, the grammar of mathematics, which would be like math facts and those types of things. The grammar of history, names, dates, and places. Every subject has a grammar to it. And so we focus in the grammar school on them knowing the grammar. About the time they're 5th, 6th grade, their minds are starting to change. They start to become argumentative. And part of it is because they want to know why, right?
Every parent nods their head and says yes.
Oh yeah. So you got, your kid who's been taught to make their bed every day when they get up from, before they go to school. All of a sudden they come down and it's like, hey, your bed's not made. And they go, well, why should I make my bed? Right? So this isn't...
Deep questions of life.
Right. But they want to know, because in their mind, like, I'm just going to get in it again. Why do I need to make my bed, right? And so it's a desire to know why.
How do I do what I do? Well, for me, there's one overarching ultimate principle: to give you more in use value than I take in cash value. It'd be like if I wrote a book and you bought that book for $10, but that book gave you a $1 million idea. I have effectively given you more in use value than I've taken from you in cash value. And that's exactly what I aim to do with what not to do.
And so what we do is from 7th to 9th grade, we see as the logic phase. And what we want to do is teach them how to discover the why, right? So in history, instead of being content with names, dates, and places, we want them to know why something happened, right? Why this? We teach them logic, informal fallacies, like this tells us what an argument is not. Formal logic, which tells you what a valid argument is. 9th grade, you're getting more into that material logic that they can look at the premises of the argument and tell you if those are true or not, which would make a sound argument, or maybe in what sense those things are. So the idea is that they can read read or listen to anything and be able to follow the argument and be able to tell you whether it's a sound argument, right? A valid or sound argument, which is great. We need people like that in our world. But the second thing is as their mind changes again in their sophomore year, usually around the time they're getting a driver's license, their minds changed again. If girls, it changes a little quicker than the guys, but they become very, very aware of themselves as a person, identity, who they belong to, who they belong with, They want to express themselves more. And so the last phase, called the rhetoric phase, is teaching them, because the issue is if they read something and they go, okay, this is the argument, these are the premises, this is their conclusion, and it's a sound argument, then the big question is, so what? Right? So what good is it? Yeah. And so what we want to do is teach them to be able to eloquently and persuasively argue or present what they believe about it, like how this truth affects me or my community or the world, what have you. And I intentionally use the word believe, right? Because it's personal, yeah. And which is a difficult thing for kids, but they have to think about it and come up with their own opinion regarding it and be able to try to persuade. Eloquently, that's the rhetoric, and so just like the grammar stage is developing knowledge, the logic stage is developing understanding. The rhetoric stage should be developing wisdom, right? Because it's this constant reflection on these truths and what this means for me, what this means for our community. So. The idea of becoming a wise person is part of that aspect. So the third part has to do with the subjects then. So what are those subjects? I mentioned we teach logic, we teach formal rhetoric. I talked about how in the grammar school they're using chants and songs and such. The methodologies, logic, their stage they begin to do some debating. A lot of oral presentations as they get into that rhetoric stage. Their junior year they write a 20 to 25 page thesis, and then they have to develop it into an oral presentation that they have to give to the school. Their senior year, their senior thesis. It's just like their junior thesis, only this time they have to defend it. So they present it to the board and faculty, and then we pepper them with questions, and they have to on the spot respond to it. And it is an amazing thing. When adults see 17 or 18-year-old students standing in front of a crowd of people presenting their thesis and then standing their ground as they're getting pelted with questions from doctors and lawyers and headmasters and teachers, and it's like awesome. And it's and it just carries on. Now Providence Academy has this added thing to it. Our mission is that we're trying to develop godly leaders. Okay. So in addition to the subjects of things like Latin and rhetoric and logic, we teach leadership classes. And then we arrange our upper school, 7th through 12th grade. They have houses, kind of like, people immediately jump to Harry Potter. We don't have Gryffindor and, that kind of stuff. But we have 3 houses in which students have the opportunity to lead. And so they learn from you learn leadership from doing leadership. And so with the classes and the practical thing, we're hoping to develop leaders. And the vision is we want to flood northeast Wisconsin with these kind of kids that are they take their faith seriously. They live virtuous lives. They have the ability to understand and to debate and to be persuasive and the character, the competence, and the commitment to lead. So that's the goal.
So
and you should all sign your kids up.
But seriously.
But seriously.
Well, yeah. So So I mean, everything you just said from learning the facts, thinking about the facts, and how to present the facts, or your opinion on the facts.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that basically what's being done in the public schools?
No.
Okay, so what's the difference? Because someone listening that's not familiar with it, and they might be like, "Hey, that sounds really good," but I feel like my kids are getting that, here. What's the difference in that system, or where does the public school system stop in that process?
Well, I think for the most part, especially since the federal government has gotten involved and everything is based on standards, it seems to be reduced primarily to that grammar stage of regurgitating back things that they've been taught. So there's very little of, and the class sizes are so big. There's so many students every teacher has. There's very little personal relationship with the students. Now, I know teachers will have personal relationships, but with only a few of their students.
Sometimes inappropriate.
Sometimes, I didn't go there. But the point is it's they leave a lot on the table, and they typically are really good at spouting back what they've been taught without actually thinking through it and debating it.
Which would make sense, I guess, for me what you were saying earlier, as far as like if the goal is to produce someone that will, go to school for 18 years, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and live for the weekends, to go to college Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, live for the weekends, to go get a job somewhere, to be a cog in that great economic wheel, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, living for the weekends, then you don't really want them to think about more than the facts. You just want to tell them what the facts are.
Yeah.
And so then, and it seems like from a business perspective, it's a pain point in across industries today. Are folks coming out and people not knowing how to think for themselves, to think analytically, to problem solve, all that kind of stuff, because they've spent so many years of their life, or their entire life up to date, just learning the answers. So, for instance, you could ace the SAT and ACT if you just knew the basic facts, right? Or you could be the 4.0 student and not actually have gained any knowledge or wisdom. Yeah,
you can still be a fool and be very smart.
And be very smart.
Yeah.
And so what you're saying is that one of the qualitative differences between classical education and the public school system as it is today is you're actually developing, and I love what you said, from understanding, right, the facts, then to the knowledge piece, how to think about the facts, and then wisdom, what do we do with the facts, and the goal is to raise leaders, not merely followers.
And it's not just facts. I'm going to use the term ideas.
Yeah.
The ideas, right? And to judge ideas, to be able to look and examine ideas and debate them and argue them and do these really stand up? I mean, I'll be blunt with a few things. One is what we've noticed in our lifetime. I'm 52, right? So in my lifetime, and especially as a leader, and as some of your audiences, I'm sure are like you said, entrepreneurs, business people, and stuff. What you notice is that our world is being formed more and more by law rather than human judgment, right? So rather than having human beings who are wise making judgments about particular situations, we have to scream policy. We have to make policies for this, policies for that. We have to, right? And if you look at the public schools as the training ground, they have stupid rules. Yeah. Stupid rules. And I think part of it is that if we can get students to mindlessly obey stupid things, they'll be great in our society. Right? They'll put up with anything. They'll put up with
because ultimately they can't really think for themselves. They just think whatever you want them to think.
And you kind of going back to a conversation we had earlier before the mic went on.
Yeah.
With the breakdown of the family, kids born out of wedlock, without fathers, there becomes more and more a reliance on someone else
Yeah.
So some authority, right? So now you have young people craving socialist, right? And for some reason, they think that'll bring out some sort of good, like they don't understand that that's going to mean less freedom, less, and maybe that desire for security outweighs their desire for freedom. It's just that they haven't experienced what a society is like that's less free and more litigious, right? It's to me it sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah.
But they think it would be wonderful, because then the responsibility is off them. They don't have to think about it. They don't have to be wise. They just follow the rules. Yeah. And then, tell me how to fill out the form, and then I get my stuff.
Yeah.
You know the why, and you know the how. So what? What is it that we're going after? Well, our big, hairy, audacious goal is to inspire 1 billion people to live a legacy worth leaving by 2030. That's 100 million people per year for the next 10 years. And my friend, it starts with you. This podcast is for you, it's about you, and I couldn't do it without you.
That was very cynical.
No, but what you're saying is, and then for just a real world example, you mentioned socialism. So the idea of, I think if it's Bernie Sanders that talks about, he wants to make education free, right? And, pay for everybody. Which in one sense sounds like a great idea, right? Who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want that kind of unfettered access to education? And there's an appeal to that because it's most people can't afford it. So if it was free for everybody, then hey, this is great. So if it's in for instance the public school system, if they're just taught the facts, hey, this is a great idea, they're not taught the logic or how to think about the facts,
right.
How to think about the idea,
right.
and then to create and give their own perspective on the idea, why it's right or why it's wrong, why would they agree or disagree with it. Then they just go hey, free education would be great, why wouldn't we want this? And then there's a pull there. And what you're saying is, when we consider something, a student coming out of Providence, for instance, or that was taught how to think properly, would say, hey, that sounds great, who's going to pay for it?
Yes.
Right? It could be something as simple as that. Then you follow through. It's this would be passed on to all of the taxpayers,
right.
And education costs billions of dollars,
right.
Which would raise everyone's taxes incredible amounts, right?
Well, and we know. I mean, I remember recently having a conversation with Canadians, right? Talking about the Canada, and talked about this one woman talked about her father who had developed some sort of cancer, but because he was 65, he was denied treatment, right? So the reality of that medical system, if everything's going to be quote unquote free, it's not free, but it's you have to distribute as best you can their limited resources. So really what would happen is, if the government is providing free education for everyone, the government will also start to tell everyone what they can and cannot major in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
Someone's going to say, hey, we have enough engineers, so you can't be an engineer. We'll make you whatever. So it's going to be would be very limited.
The options get reduced, and this goes back to the distinction between what you said of legislation and human judgment has options. Instead of saying hey, you get to decide where your dollars want to go for education for your family, we're just going to take it out of your paycheck.
Right.
It's kind of like
right.
that. So they create the legislation to do that.
Yeah.
So you're still paying for it. It's just going to come out of your paycheck, right?
Yeah.
And simultaneously, you start to lose your options, because they've got the money now, they're going to control the shots. And so I think one of the cool things that and that Providence is doing in a different way of saying it is, you actually are giving kids, helping them to see that they have more options in life.
Right.
So in business terms, they could be the CEO,
yes,
not the customer service representative.
Yes.
Or at least, if they wanted to be the customer service representative, they could choose that path.
And they'd be a great one.
Not have it chosen for them, and be a great one, and probably not stay there long because they're leaders and they're going to grow and outwork everybody else, and then take over and eventually become the CEO anyway, right?
Yeah. That's bring up two other parts to it too. Is our program's an academically rigorous one. So if a student goes through Providence the entire way, they have worked hard at it. This is one of the other things is we meet other high school kids, and the idea that high school has been hard work is really not true, right? And we co-op with NEW Lutheran and the sports, and so my daughter's in sports and stuff, and she talks about how none of the other players have much homework, if any, and she's always got homework, and they'll be coming home from an away volleyball game, and the coach will have her sit, and she'll use his hot spot on the Wi-Fi so she can get her homework done. But the other part to it, the final part to it, is this whole idea of being able to stand and give your opinion and disagree, and have that, and to be able to defend yourself in disagreements, it creates a confidence that you can do it. I met with one of the business leader here in town recently, and I asked what he looks for. What are you looking for in an employee? And one of the things he said is edginess. I want an edgy employee, and so I'm like going, tell me about. He wanted character. He wanted original thinking. Just being able to think well and be smart, and edginess. And I said, what is edginess? And his example was someone who could stand in a meeting, or be in a meeting and disagree with what they're doing, and be able to give one, not to be afraid to disagree. And I see that value. I see that's so needed to be able to
lean into that kind of tension where a lot of people would just be afraid to do that.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So to the point in the conversation about education, we've been talking about it in a way, contrasting like the public school system and classical education. But it started with an important adjective: Christian education, classical Christian education. So some folks might be thinking, "Hey, that's great. Why do I need? What's the big deal about the Christian piece of it? Couldn't I just be getting the same thing if it was just a classical school that followed the method, or if I homeschooled in a classical manner, or public school? What does religion have to do with it?" So,
pagans started classical education, so evidently you can't. But the ends in mind would be different. It depends. Like in education, every education or paideia has a polis in mind, right? So I just use Greek. So every education has a particular culture, a particular city in mind. So the Spartans, when they educated their children, they're trying to they're teaching their kids how to steal, and how to fight, and those kinds of things, because that's what a citizen of Sparta needed.
For war.
Right. So in Athens, they have a democracy. They have to teach them this, rhetoric, logic and rhetoric, so that they can stand in the Senate or the Assembly and argue for, whatever the Assembly is deciding on. And again, it's we look at America, and the vision of what we've become is basically it all revolves around an economy. Like everything, it's like almost as if our world has decided nothing else matters as long as we're making a lot of money in our country, right? So, who cares about sexual ethics? Who cares about, what's the definition of a good life? Yeah, right. So, if you look at the good life in America, it revolves around getting ahead, making money, right? And then you look at, you talk to people who have been successful in that, and it doesn't necessarily guarantee that they're happy, right? So what we do is we look at if as Christians we have a different goal. It's the kingdom of God. Now we understand that the kingdom of God and the kingdom of man, or the city of man, you might say, they exist together, right? So as Christians, we exist in our world, and we'll always have that tension. But the idea is then that vision of what we're doing, this world that is truly from that biblical perspective, with the knowledge of who we are and who God is and what He expects, then becomes one that's truly good, truly, just, truly beautiful. So there's a higher. So the idea is that the student who's pursuing these various things in our world, whether it's a job or money, a house, a spouse, those types of things, there's an even higher principle involved, and that is God and His kingdom, right? So, and this is what our world really needs, is that corrective of what something that's true, good, and beautiful in our world. And it is our hope that our students are the ones that are creating such a culture and a civilization that the world would want to follow.
Wow, powerful thought there from Ron Jung. It reminds me of something that we discussed a few episodes ago. You are the culture. I am the culture. We all have an internal belief system that comes out of our fingertips, and it creates a culture. So it's therefore not whether or not we're creating a culture, a society, a civilization. It's rather what kind of culture, what kind of society, what kind of civilization are we creating? And if that isn't a loaded question for a Thursday, I don't know what is. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation with Ron as much as I have. And if you have, share it with somebody that you think would also really enjoy it. Would love to learn more about these things and hear from someone with such experience like Ron. One way you can do that is to give the show a 5-star rating on whatever platform you listen to, and help to get not only Ron's story but all these stories out to the world. And that is the main aim here, as we are aiming to inspire 1 billion people to live a legacy worth leaving, to build a society, a culture worth building, right? Well, stay tuned for part 2 with Ron Jung coming out tomorrow. And until then, it's been said that good men learn from their own mistakes, but great men, they learn from the mistakes of others. So go and be great, and we'll see you next time.